Hey, what is up everybody? It's Animac here for AnimeUproar, and anime is full of diabolical villains who just seem to stick with you because of how cruel and ruthless they are. There are a ton of memorable top tier villains, from Griffith and Johann Liebert to Bone Druid and Castor from Fate Zero. But I never hear Upper Moon 2 Doma being mentioned in that conversation, and he really should be. Now, I realize that Demon Slayer is a newer series and that the full extent of Doma's psychotic nature has only been revealed in the manga as of the making of this video. But the more I think about it, the more I feel that Doma really is one of the most insane, diabolical, and brutally evil villains in the history of anime and manga. This man is the third strongest demon in the world. He is a full-time cult leader, and he is apparently in love with one of the Hashira, and that's just scratching the surface, so let's get into it. If you guys enjoy our Demon Slayer content and you want us to keep it going, you know what to do. Just leave a quick like and comment. It only takes a second, but it helps with that YouTube algorithm. And of course, if you don't want to miss more Demon Slayer videos in the future, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell to turn on all notifications. Now, a quick shout out to our partner, 𝔽 ℎ𝕂𝕗. 𝔽ℂ𝕗𝕗 is an online retailer in Japan that makes anime merch that is normally exclusive to Japan available to fans all over the world. They have a huge selection of awesome anime merch straight from Japan, including an entire section on Demon Slayer. They've got the best Demon Slayer figurines I've ever seen available for pre-order right now, including Tanjiro, Rengoku, Tengen, Akaza, and more. Check them out, link in the description. And because we're partnered with them, you can now use coupon code AnimeUproar500 for an instant discount. Just register an account for free, it's really quick, and you'll be able to use the coupon. When you use the coupon code, you are not only getting awesome merch, but directly supporting this channel, so check it out, link in the description. Finally, this video will of course contain Demon Slayer manga spoilers, so please proceed with caution, you have been warned. We first meet Doma in the climax of the Entertainment District arc during Gyutaro's flashback to when he became a demon. This was over 100 years ago, and back then Doma held the rank of Upper Moon 6. He approaches Gyutaro and his sister as they are dying on the ground, and he offers them the opportunity to become demons. Our very first visual of Doma is that of a smiling, bright-eyed young man who just happens to be holding a woman's body parts and has blood flowing from his mouth. That one image alone is enough to convey so much about this character, and yet this is nothing compared to what we learn about him as the story continues. His first appearance in the present time is chapter 98 of the manga, during the meeting of the Upper Demon Moons called by Muzan following Gyutaro's death. Gyutaro is the first Upper Moon to be defeated in 113 years, and this infuriates Muzan. He wants his Upper Demon Moons to regroup and redouble their efforts to achieve his ultimate goals, which are destroying the Demon Slayers and attaining a way to conquer the sun. The situation is extremely tense for everyone, and yet Doma is grinning from ear to ear. He casually places his hand on Akaza's shoulder and starts talking about how worried he was about everyone because they are all his precious comrades. Doma is saying this because when they were all summoned to the Infinity Castle, they knew that one of the Upper Moons was likely killed, but they didn't know which one. You really get the feeling that Doma is not being completely sincere here, and that his behavior in general is just somehow off. Doma tells Gyoko that he placed a woman's freshly severed head into a vase that Gyoko had given him, and Doma is now using that vase to decorate his room. Yeah, that is the kind of person that Doma is, and the creepiest thing here is that Doma isn't trying to be like edgy or provocative. He genuinely doesn't think that there is anything wrong with his actions, and he talks about his new quote-unquote decoration as casually as someone would talk about a new lamp or carpet. It's clear from the get-go that Akaza despises Doma, and even punches Doma's jaw off because the other demon was touching his shoulder. When Muzan arrives and reveals that Gyutaro has died, Doma apologizes because he had been the one that brought Gyutaro into the demon ranks. He even offers to gouge out one of his eyes as punishment, but Muzan says that there's no need. However, even as Doma is apparently being apologetic and offering to punish himself, he is still grinning from ear to ear. His mannerisms and expressions don't seem to match his words, and that is a constant creepy theme with Doma. As Muzan dispatches Gyoko and Hantengu on a mission to the Swordsmith village, Doma eagerly screams out that he wants to go too. And then Akaza decides to smash half of his head off because he was speaking out of turn to Lord Muzan. Kokushibo, the strongest demon moon, then admonishes Akaza for going too far by striking someone above his own rank, but a newly regenerated Doma smiles again and says that he doesn't even mind Akaza's attacks. According to Doma, Akaza is just upset that despite becoming a demon before Doma, Doma is already stronger than him, and that is why Akaza has a lower rank. Throughout this whole meeting, Doma is acting almost like he wants to be friends with the other upper moons, even though that is clearly not the type of relationship that they have with each other. But again, Doma's lighthearted behavior seems somehow insincere. It's like an act, but an act that he himself is trying to believe. Before leaving the Upper Moon meeting after his request to join the mission was rejected, Doma seems like he's trying to ask the Biwa player Nakime out on a date, but she instantly declines and sends him back to his home. And that is when we find out what Doma does in his spare time. It turns out that Doma is the leader of a cult called the Paradise Faith. Doma was born with remarkable rainbow-colored eyes and pristine white hair, which made people start to worship him as some sort of supernatural being. His own parents convinced themselves that Doma could hear the voices of gods, and so they created the Paradise Faith religion around him. Doma never heard the voices of gods, and he found it ridiculous that fully grown adults would believe this stuff and that they would worship him, a clueless child. He thought all those people were crazy because he himself didn't even believe in paradise. He believed that it was all just fairy tales, and he thought that the people who believed them were so dumb that it actually made him cry. But Doma played along because he wanted to use his position to help all these pitiful people and to make them happy. I mean, that doesn't sound so bad, right? Sure, he didn't believe in the cult's teachings, but he was at least trying to use his position to help people, right? Right? Well, just wait until you find out how exactly Doma thinks he is, quote-unquote, helping people. While Doma was still fairly young, his mother found out that his father was cheating on her with female followers of the cult. She then proceeded to stab him to death before taking her own life. But Doma didn't feel shocked or sad or lonely after this happened. His first thought was that his mother shouldn't have made such a mess in the room and that someone now has to clean all that blood. Human emotions meant nothing to him even before he became a demon, and he saw them all as akin to pointless dreams. In short, Doma was always a complete sociopath. And this was only exacerbated further once Doma met Muzan and became a demon at the age of 20. After becoming a demon, Doma became immortal. And since he never believed in paradise or an afterlife of any kind, Doma developed the warped belief that because everyone fears death, they can just live forever through him after he devours them. And because his victims are no longer afraid of anything or suffering in any way after he eats them, Doma believes that he is actually saving them by devouring them. This is truly one of the most warped and sadistic philosophies that I have ever come across, and this is one of the major reasons why I think Doma deserves to be mentioned among the most brutal and evil villains in the history of anime and manga. For generation after generation, Doma used his cult to attract female followers whom he would then manipulate and devour. And not only would he do it without any empathy or remorse, but he actually felt good about himself because he genuinely believed that he was offering nothing short of salvation to these women. Some 15 years before the beginning of the story, Inosuke's own mother sadly fell victim to Doma. Inosuke's mother was only 17 or 18 years old when she decided to escape from her abusive husband who would beat her up every day. She had no family and no one to turn to, so she sought help and shelter from the Paradise Faith for her and her baby. She had been beaten so badly that she had gone blind in one eye and her entire face was swollen, but once she healed up, Doma thought that she was quite beautiful. Her name was Kotoha, and in fact, Inosuke looks a lot like her. Apparently, Doma wasn't planning on devouring Inosuke's mother because he enjoyed having her by his side, but Kotoha was observant and she realized that Doma was secretly devouring his female followers. Kotoha couldn't just stand by and watch this happen, so she confronted Doma, cursed him, and tried to flee his temple. Doma didn't want the truth to get out, so he cornered Kotoha in the woods and killed her. When his mother was killed, baby Inosuke fell from a cliff and into a body of water. Doma assumed that the baby had died, but instead the baby survived and was raised in the wilderness by wild boars. After killing Kotoha, Doma devoured her whole, bones and all. And as you might expect, he didn't regret it at all because he is such a sick psychopath. According to Doma, Kotoha's life was miserable and meaningless, but because he devoured her, she could now live forever inside of him. Doma would eventually come face to face with Inosuke during the Infinity Castle arc, and he would shamelessly gloat about what he did to his mother right in front of him. Over a decade after the death of Kotoha, and only about 4 years before the present time, Doma faced Kanae Kocho, the former Flower Hashira, in battle. Kanae was the older sister of Shinobu Kocho, and she was fatally wounded during that battle with Doma. Although Doma was unable to finish her off and devour her because the sun was coming out and he had to flee. When he comes face to face with Shinobu during the Infinity Castle arc, Doma says that he remembers Kanae and that she was kind and cute. He then says that he regrets that he couldn't finish devouring her because the sun came up and so he had to run away. Now, Shinobu is determined to avenge her sister, and she has been planning for this moment for years. She then engages Doma in a bitter battle to the death, and despite the fact that she puts up an incredibly valiant effort, ultimately Doma manages to seriously injure Shinobu. Just as it seems that Shinobu has been defeated, she sees a vision of her sister, Kanae. Even though in the past Kanae told her sister to just quit being a demon slayer so she can live a normal life, this time Kanae tells Shinobu to stand up. She tells her that now that she's already gone this far, she has to defeat this demon. So Shinobu forces herself to stand up despite having multiple injuries, and she attacks Doma again using her unbelievable speed. Shinobu is so fast that even an upper moon like Doma cannot anticipate her next move. She even manages to pierce Doma right through the neck with her poison-laced sword. Shinobu isn't strong enough to actually take off an upper moon's head, but she hopes that poisoning him in such a vital spot will be enough to take him out. Doma still appears to be unaffected by her poison. Consistent with his previous psychotic behavior, Doma grabs Shinobu as if he's hugging her. Tears flow down his face as he tells Shinobu how admirable it is for her to keep fighting so bravely despite the fact that her situation is utterly hopeless. She's so weak and yet she's trying so hard, and Doma thinks that this is just adorable. Doma proclaims that because Shinobu has impressed him so much, he now considers her worthy of being devoured by him so the two of them can be together forever. When Doma asks Shinobu if she has any last words, she just tells him to go to hell. This was such an emotional and heartbreaking moment. I remember while reading this part of the manga, 3 different things were going through my mind at the same time. First, seeing Shinobu lose her life like this was heart-wrenching. At the same time, I also felt such respect for her for standing her ground and fighting so bravely until the very end. Finally, I couldn't help but think what a creepy and terrifying villain Doma is. Like, this man is genuinely scary. He is a terrible, terrible person, but that also makes him a pretty great and memorable villain. As a helpless Kanao watches in utter shock, Doma begins absorbing Shinobu into his own demon body. And by the way, Kanao with an O is Shinobu's apprentice, Kanae with an E is Shinobu's sister. Kanao tries to attack Doma and save Shinobu using the 4th form of flower breathing, but Doma is too fast. He even smiles and begins to gloat about how fine feasts seem to be coming to him one after the other. Just inhuman levels of evil. But Kanao then says something very important. She calls out Doma for what he is right to his face. He is nothing but a blatant sociopath who is completely incapable of feeling normal human emotions. He pretends to show emotions because he has learned over time what the socially appropriate response is in a given situation. But deep inside, he feels nothing. He is nothing but an empty shell. That is why in the end, Kanae had actually felt sorry for him before she died. And when I saw Kanao say this, it honestly explained so much about Doma. It explained why his behavior and expressions just don't seem to fit with the situation, and why he always seems like he's putting on an act, even if he himself has convinced himself that the act is real. Doma is a truly demented sociopath who simply cannot comprehend the feelings of other people. He doesn't have any sympathy for or connection with other people, and so he is always just playing a role. He is acting the way that he thinks he is supposed to act, when in truth he himself is nothing but an empty, rotting shell. Kanao's words must ring true here because Doma is clearly displeased by what she has said, and the two of them engage in a fierce battle. Just as Doma manages to take her sword and just as it looks like it's finally game over for Kanao, our boy Inosuke shows up and joins the fight. A short but intense showdown ensues between Kanao and Inosuke and Doma, And then, unexpectedly, Shinobu returns to center stage for one final act. It turns out that Shinobu knew ahead of time that in order to defeat Upper Moon 2 Doma, the man who killed her sister, she would have to sacrifice her own life. And so she always intended to do exactly that. She knew that Doma was a glutton who loved devouring women in particular, and she knew that he wouldn't be able to resist devouring a female Hashira with a strong body. So Shinobu began ingesting wisteria flower poison little by little for over a year so that she would slowly build a resistance to it, and so that she could have a lot of it circulating through her body when Doma eventually consumed her. With her sword alone, Shinobu was able to only deliver a small amount of poison into Doma's body, and it was never enough to do anything to him. But once he consumed her, he also consumed 70 times the lethal amount of wisteria poison. As Doma is fighting Kanao and Inosuke, all that poison finally kicks in. His body begins to literally break down. His very bones begin to melt, and even with his demonic regeneration, he cannot undo the effects of such an immense amount of poison. Doma desperately tries to keep himself together, but Kanao and Inosuke work as a team to cut off his head, and so Upper Moon 2 Doma is finally defeated. But even death is not the end to Doma's terrifying creepiness. Doma suddenly finds himself face to face with Shinobu once again, presumably somewhere between this life and the next. Shinobu gets to see the outcome of her sacrifice, and Doma must accept his death at her hands. And while you might expect Doma to be angry or afraid or shocked, he is none of those things. Instead, true to his madness until the very end, Doma tells Shinobu that he finally understands what love is, because after everything that they just went through together, Doma knows that he truly loves her. Doma then asks Shinobu if she would accompany him to hell, and Shinobu smiles and says, "After you, you worthless bastard." Yeah, so now you know why I find Doma to be such a terrifyingly creepy villain. His way of thinking and acting is just so different from a normal human. His method of helping people is so warped, his understanding of love is so twisted, and the way that he smiles while saying and doing the most grotesque things imaginable is just so uncanny. In terms of his worldview and mental state, Doma is by far the scariest out of all the villains and demon slayers in my personal opinion, and that includes Muzan. I mean, sure, all demons do terrible things, but their motivations are usually simple to understand. They want immortality, or they want power, or they just like to fight, and so on. But Doma, he is something else. A cult leader who saves his followers by devouring them, a sociopath whose entire life is an act, but an act that he himself has started to believe, and the man whom Shinobu has dedicated her life to destroying, and yet that very act of destroying him has made Doma fall in love with her. Wow, it is hard to find the words to properly describe a man as dark and twisted as Doma. All I can say is well done to 𝔽 ℂ𝕂, the author of Demon Slayer, for creating such a captivating and memorable villain. Okay, now guys, let me know, who is your favorite villain in Demon Slayer, and do you agree with my analysis of Doma? Leave a comment down below, I always love hearing from you. If you're looking for a video to watch next, we have an entire video on Doma's powers and how strong he really is, link in the description. Don't forget to check out Itaikuji and use the promo code AnimeUproar500, link down below. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more Demon Slayer content here on the channel very soon, don't forget to leave that like. It only takes a second, but it really helps. And if you're new to AnimeUproar, or maybe you've been watching our stuff but you just haven't taken the time to subscribe yet, do me a quick favor and make this the video that you subscribe and hit that notification bell to turn on all notifications. You might think it's not a big deal, but yeah, one person subscribing actually helps a lot on YouTube. You can also hit me up on Twitter and Instagram at AnimeUproar. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, see ya, Space Cowboy.